I still remember the exact moment my life turned upside down. It was 3:17 a.m. I was on the highway driving home from a trip. And as I got my phone out to put on the windshield mount, I saw the text. It read, "Do you know how long you've been dead?" I just laughed it off as some stupid joke. Ooh. But then when I looked down, I saw what made me slam on the brakes. This sender had sent a picture. It was of me standing next to my car. But how? I hadn't taken any pictures. In fact, I hadn't even touched my phone since leaving the house. So who took the picture? Was it a telemarketer or someone else? Who was this person, and why were they messaging me? As soon as these questions left my mind, my eyes started to widen. I finally noticed something I should have seen minutes ago. The picture wasn't taken recently. It must have been taken hours before I left my house, because I was wearing clothes I hadn't worn in weeks. Clothes I didn't even like anymore. In fact, when I had bought them, I said I would never wear them again. How could I have been photographed in them if I had never left the house? My legs went weak, and I slowly slid down in my seat. This was no longer funny. Something terrible was going on. And suddenly the text I had received didn't seem like a joke either. It seemed like a question I needed an answer to. Do you know how long you've been dead? No, I don't know how long I've been dead. That's because I'm not dead, right? Right now, my heart beat started to accelerate. My breathing began to increase in pace, and I could feel my heart pounding against my ribs. I was struggling to breathe. I tried to calm myself down, but it wasn't easy. Suddenly, I remembered the day I had taken these pictures. It was the day my wife had died. I couldn't believe I had forgotten. I had blocked it out. How could I have forgotten such an important day? I felt sick. Why was someone messaging me about this day? Was this person watching me? Were they following me? I didn't know what to do. I was scared and confused. What did this message mean? But did the person who sent the message know more than me? Did they know something about my wife's death? I couldn't help but think of all the conspiracy theories surrounding my wife's death. Maybe she wasn't actually dead. Maybe she was lying somewhere, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maybe she had faked her own death. Maybe she had planned everything. Maybe I was being punished for not loving her enough. Wait, why was I thinking this way? She was the one who had betrayed me, who had left me for another man. Of course I was upset, but this was absurd. I quickly shook my head, trying to clear it. I had to stop these thoughts. They were getting out of control. I took a few deep breaths and forced myself to relax. This was just a coincidence. That's all it was. Someone had sent me a picture by mistake. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. I tried to convince myself, but deep down I knew I would unrest until I found out who had sent the message and why. I decided I would go back home and check the security footage from the day the picture was taken. Maybe that would give me some answer. Maybe I would find out who had sent me the message. I drove home as fast as I could. As I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to see the footage. I ran inside and went straight to my computer. I clicked on the camera footage from the day the picture was taken. At first, there was nothing unusual. Just me walking around my house, checking the mail, mowing the lawn, and going about my daily routine. Then I saw him. A man dressed in black was walking across my yard. He was tall and thin with a long white beard. He was carrying a backpack and was looking at me. His face was pale and his eyes were dark and soulless. I could feel a cold sweat forming on my skin. Who was this man? Why was he in my yard? And most importantly, did he take the picture? The thought that someone had been watching me sent chills down my spine. I had to get out of the house. I had to get away from the cameras. I couldn't bear the thought that someone had been watching me without my knowledge. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the house. I got in my car and started driving. I didn't know where I was going, but I just kept driving. I could hear the man's footsteps behind me. They were getting closer. I could hear him breathing heavily. I could feel his eyes burning into my neck. I could hear him calling my name. Bye. Could hear him whispering threats. I could hear him promising revenge. Bye. Could feel him reaching for me. I could feel him touching me. I could feel him biting me. I could feel him tearing me apart. I could feel him consuming me. I could feel him becoming me. The last thing I remember is feeling a sharp pain in my chest. Then everything went black. Hello, I'm here. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please make sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on any new stories. And if you want to hear more stories like these, just click on the link in the description below. Thanks for listening. We woke up to the sound of birds tweeting and the smell of pine needles. I sat up in the passenger seat and turned to my boyfriend in the driver's seat and asked, what the hell just happened? Ben was equally confused and scared. His eyes were wide with terror as he looked at me and said, I don't know. How did we get here? And why do I feel like someone is watching us? We were parked on the side of a deserted highway in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't another car in sight, and there hadn't been for a mile. The gas gauge was completely empty and our phones had no service. But what really terrified us was that we couldn't remember stopping to sleep in our car. The last thing we remembered was driving home from visiting his parents the night before. It was late and we were exhausted, so we decided to stop at a motel and sleep before hitting the road again in the morning. The next thing we knew, we were parked on the side of the highway with absolutely no memory of getting there. What I found even more disturbing was that the windows were fogged up, as if someone had been inside the car with us. We both started to panic. Where were we? Who had put us there? And how did our car get out of gas? We looked around frantically for clues, but it was no use. All we could see was miles and miles of highway in all directions. It was too early in the morning for traffic and too remote for anyone to be walking by anytime soon. We were completely alone, lost and stranded. As we sat there, trying to figure out what to do, I noticed something strange. The engine of our car was still warm, almost as if it had been running recently. We both knew that couldn't be possible. Our car was completely out of gas. I tried to rationalize what was going on. Maybe we had stopped for gas and I had blacked out. Or maybe someone had put us there. But those thoughts were quickly dismissed. We would have remembered stopping for gas, and there was no one else in the car. So who could have put us there? Just then, Ben turned the car over, and it started with a loud cough. I stared at him in disbelief as he looked back at me with equal shock on his face. How is this possible? I turned the key in the ignition, and it turned over. We have no gas, Ben explained. I don't know, but we don't have a choice right now. We need to get out of here. I knew he was right. We didn't know who or what was out there, and the longer we stayed in that car, the worse things could get. As we drove along the highway, the forest on either side of us seemed to close in like a dark, menacing presence. The trees were tall and old and twisted into strange shapes that looked like gnarled fingers reaching out to grab us. Every mile marker we passed seemed to confirm our growing sense of dread. We were truly in the middle of nowhere. The silence of the forest was broken only by the sound of our own breathing and the hum of the car's engine. I couldn't help but feel like we were being watched, stalked by some unseen predator lurking just beyond our sight. The feeling was so intense that I started to hyperventilate. Then suddenly, through the trees, we saw a flicker of movement. A dark shape shifted and vanished. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to see through the thick foliage. But whatever it was gone. Had I imagined it, or was something sinister hiding in the woods just beyond our vision? Ben gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white as he maneuvered the car through the winding road. The unsettling feeling of being watched intensified, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the warmth of the summer day. The dense canopy of trees blocked out the sun, casting long, eerie shadows that danced and twisted in the twilight. It was as if the forest itself was alive, breathing, watching our every move. And then we heard it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the very depths of the forest. It was a primal sound that sent shivers down my spine and made my blood run cold. Ben slammed on the brakes, causing the car to skid to a halt. We both turned toward the sound, our eyes wide with terror. Was it a bear, a wild animal, or something more sinister lurking in the shadows? Before we could react, a dark figure emerged from behind a tree. It was tall and thin, with long, sharp teeth that glistened in the dim light. Its eyes glowed a menacing red, sending a surge of adrenaline through my veins. Frozen in fear, I watched as the creature took a step toward us. Then, another. It was moving closer, revealing its grotesque features. Its skin was pale and sickly, stretched taut over its bones. It had no hair, no clothes. It was a horrifying spectacle that defied rational explanation. As it approached, I could hear its ragged breathing, smell the stench of decay that emanated from its rotting flesh. But then it spoke, its voice a raspy whisper that seemed to slither through the air. "Get out of my forest," it rasped, its words dripping with menace. "This is my territory. Leave now and never return." Terror gripped me, constricting my throat, stealing my breath. I wanted to scream, to run, but fear held me captive. The creature took another step forward, its eyes boring into mine. And in that moment, I knew I had to do something. Anything to escape the creature's grasp. It lunged for the door handle, fumbled with it, desperate to escape. Finally, it opened, and I stumbled out of the car, crashing to the ground. Scrambling away from the creature, I ran blindly into the forest, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes, leaves stinging my skin. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear the creature crashing after me, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath me. Adrenaline surged through my veins, propelling me forward. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get away from the creature, from the forest, from that terrifying place. I burst out of the tree line onto a dirt road and kept running, stumbling, falling, but getting back up again. I didn't dare slow down, not until I heard the sound of the creature's footsteps fade into the distance, replaced by my own ragged breathing, which, when I finally stopped, my legs trembled beneath me, my lungs burned, and my throat was raw from screaming. I collapsed onto the side of the road, tears streaming down my face, my body shaking with sobs and gasps. As I lay there, catching my breath, the horrifying realization washed over me. I was alone, lost in the middle of nowhere, with no way to contact anyone, no one who knew I was even here. And whatever that creature was, it was still out there in the forest, lurking in the shadows, waiting for who knows what. I forced myself to my feet, my legs weak and shaky. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed 911, hoping for help. But when I turned it over, the screen was shattered, the glass dead, my worst nightmare coming true. We stopped at a roadside diner off Highway 13, just north of San Bernardino. It was one of those all-night joints you see in movies where the parking lot is filled with truckers and people who have nowhere else to go. And as soon as we walked through the door, the bell above it jingled like a funeral chime. There were 3 of us in the car, me, my girlfriend, and my friend Gary. We were on our way back home after seeing a show in Los Angeles. It had been a great night out. The kind of night where you feel sorry for people who didn't get to experience it. So we were in good spirits when we got out of the car and walked into the diner. It was one of those places where the coffee tastes like weak dishwater, and the menu has pictures of burgers on every page. We sat down at a small table next to a window, and I could feel my girlfriend staring at me. She was trying not to, but I knew what she was thinking. How did you find this place? Because most guys woe and lead their girlfriends to some random all-night diner where the ceiling tiles are held together with spit and hope. I had my reasons, or rather I had a hunch, that this particular place might have something to offer us. Something other than stale coffee and greasy food. But I wasn't sure what it was. I'd seen the place while driving past it earlier in the evening. I had this feeling that something bad happened there. Or maybe it was happening there right now. When I looked up from my menu, I could see Gary was having the same thought. P was staring at the window like he could see something on the other side of it that was under. It was like looking through a wall. He shook his head and looked away. Maybe I imagined it, but I swear I saw a flicker of something behind his eyes, like a thought so terrible it scared him. The waitress came over and took our order. While we waited for our food, I kept looking around the diner. There weren't many customers and none of them seemed happy. They all looked tired, defeated, like they'd lost something important. Like hope. Get it made me uncomfortable, and I wanted to leave. Before I could, the woman in the booth by the counter stood up and came over to us. She was young, no older than 25, and her dress was dirty, like she'd crawled through mud to get to the diner. Her hair was matted and smelled like urine, even from where I was sitting. Peesh. She leaned over our table and said, "Don't take the old highway." Then she turned and walked back to her booth without another word. Me, what? Gary, what did she say? Me. She just warned us not to take the old highway. Then we all looked at each other, confused. None of us knew what she was talking about. Gary shrugged and went back to his menu. I tried to eat, but it was no use. The woman's words kept ringing in my head. Don't take the old highway. But which highway was she talking about? When the waitress came back with our food, I asked her if there was an old highway nearby. She just stared at me blankly and walked away. After we finished eating, we paid the bill and hurried outside. I wanted to get away from that place, and from the feeling that I was being watched. B got in the car and started the engine. I pulled out of the parking lot and onto Highway, the same road we'd been on since leaving LA. It was a dark, narrow road lined with trees that seemed to reach out and grab at the passing cars. I could feel my girlfriend's eyes on me, waiting for me to break the silence. Me, did you see that, Gary? See what? Me, that woman. She was following us. Gary, you're crazy. She was in a booth. She couldn't have been following us. Me. But how did she know our car? Gary, you think too much. Let's just drop it. As we drove, I kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. And then I saw it. A dirt car, the same make and model as ours, was coming up fast behind us. Its headlights were like the eyes of a predator, and its dark windows were like the pits of its stare. I could feel my heart beating in my chest as I tried to pull away from the car. But no matter how fast I drove, it stayed right behind us, like a shadow that refused to be cast off. Then, suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the road split into two. One path continued straight ahead, and the other turned sharply to the right. I hesitated for a moment, torn between the two roads. Which one should I take? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. But before I could decide, the car behind me sped past, disappearing around the bend. I could feel my girlfriend's hand tighten on my arm. Me, what do we do? Gary, keep going straight. I nodded and gripped the steering wheel, relief washing over me as I saw the car disappear from view. As we drove on, the trees grew thicker, blocking out the little light that had been filtering through the canopy. The road narrowed to a single lane, and the air grew heavy with the smell of pine and decay. I could feel my girlfriend's body tense up against mine, and I knew she was just as uneasy as I was. Suddenly, a sign appeared in front of us, seeming to materialize out of the darkness. A cred road closed, and beneath it, detour via old highway. My heart sank as I realized we had no choice but to turn back. With trembling hands, I shifted the car into reverse, and we began the slow, agonizing process of turning around. The trees on either side of us seemed to close in, forming a tunnel of darkness that pressed in on all sides. The car behind us hadn't reappeared, but I could feel its presence watching us, waiting for us to make a wrong move. Finally, we'd reached the point where the road split again. This time, though the sign had changed, the detour was no longer needed, and we could continue straight ahead on the old highway. My hands were shaking as I turned the wheel, and we plunged into the darkness. The old highway was even more narrow than the last, and the trees were so thick that the road was almost completely covered in shadow. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a scream in the darkness. I could feel my girlfriend's fear seeping into me, and I knew I had to do something to stop it. "It's okay," I whispered, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "It's just an old highway. It can't be that bad." But as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. This was no ordinary road. It was a trap, a snare laid out for unsuspecting travelers like us. And I was beginning to realize that we had already been caught. All at once, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter with every passing second. I slammed on the brakes and pulled off the road into the soft dirt. Pooh! The car behind us screeched to a halt beside us, and I could feel my girlfriend's body go rigid with fear. The door on the other side opened, and a figure emerged from the darkness. As the being approached, I could make out the details of its face, or what was left of it. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. Suddenly, the creature lunged toward us, and I screamed as I turned to see the same twisted face inches away from mine. Bright. Its breath was hot and foul, and its claws were sharp and long. Before I could react, it was on top of me, and I felt its teeth tear into my flesh. And then everything went black.